Hello, I'm your host Sarah, and this is Insane. Salam everyone, and welcome to this episode of Insane. I hope everyone is doing well. We're going to be carrying on with human purpose in relations to well-being. So within contemporary understandings, human purpose is situated within the understanding that you find a purpose for yourself and then live for it. And this is supposed to give you a sense of meaning and worth. And of course, that hardly happens. I mean, most of us don't know what we're doing here, even though we are Muslim and we have been told what we're doing here, but we still have a sense of being insignificant and irrelevant at times. You do go through phases in life where you're thinking, what is going on? Like, there has to be more to life than this. And that's because there is. Our human purpose has already been explained to us. We've been told that we've been sent here for no other purpose but to worship God. And we mistakenly believe that worshipping God is prayer and fasting and Hajj, reading Quran, etc. And of course it does involve those things, but it's much bigger than that. Worshipping God can take many different forms and can happen at any moment of your life. It just depends on how often you are aware of your human purpose. So being aware of your human purpose means that you become aware of God. And once you become aware of God, that awareness goes on to influence your behavior at that very moment. And because it influences your behavior, that behavior, whatever it may be, becomes an act of worship. So you can change a very mundane act. For example, let's take walking. So that very act of walking on its own doesn't really have any benefit to you apart from getting you to where you want to be. It can have health benefits, but even that requires intention. I came across a study whilst doing my research, and they basically asked a group of housekeepers how much exercise they did. And the housekeepers, most of them said not much because they were busy at work, and once they got home, they had no energy to do exercise. And so the researchers explained to them that actually their housekeeping responsibilities was all a form of exercise. And they explained this to them. So when they hoover, they could burn this many calories, taking laundry out, going up the stairs, etc. So they got the housekeepers to see that their tasks that they were carrying out on a daily basis as part of their vocation was actually exercise. So they took the weights of all these housekeepers and their blood pressures, and then they came back within a couple of months, and they found that the housekeepers had lost weight and had lower blood pressure, and they hadn't done anything other than carry on doing their housekeeping duties. And it was found that because they changed their perspective towards their work and actually saw it as a form of exercise, they actually lost weight. And so you can see how important perception is. And I said perception, but you can also say intention. So you can see how important intention is. And we're told in Islam over and over again that intention is important. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are judged by their intentions. And this is what God means. When their intention is there, then it's the intention that dictates whether a certain action is for you or against you. So you can be doing a good act, you can be praying, but if your intention is to make people think that you're a good person and the prayer isn't for God, as it should be, then you will have no spiritual benefit from that prayer. And some of those spiritual benefits are feelings of peace and tranquility. So if we go back to the example of the walk, so whilst you're walking, if God blesses you with his awareness, because it's shaitan that makes you unaware of God. And so it's God. If you at any moment all of a sudden remember God, take that as a honoring, as a blessing. So if you're blessed randomly whilst you're walking with remembering God, you can change that walk into an act of worship. You can say, Alhamdulillah for my body, and I walk with the intention of making this body strong so that I can continue to serve God and be his representative on earth. And this gives you a sense of purpose and a sense of worth. A sense of worth that is meaningful and lasts, because it's not situated in something like the ego. It's situated in God. So you will always feel worthy. You will always feel significant, because you will remember that your purpose in life is to represent God on earth, to be the physical manifestation of the truth of God on earth, either through your words or your actions. And this is a beautiful purpose. You can never feel insignificant if you keep reinforcing that inside you. You will always feel a sense of worth. And getting into the habit of living in this way, where you turn mundane actions into acts of worship purely because you've connected them with God and remembered God whilst doing them, can have a massive effect on you in terms of changing who you are as a person and your characteristics. So for example, if we go back to the example of walking, once you've had this intention, you're unlikely going to listen to vulgar lyrics in music. You're unlikely going to walk to a place full of people doing sinful things. So all of a sudden, who you hang out with starts to change, where you go to starts to change, what you listen to starts to change. You make room for other people to come into your life, for you to hear different experiences, for you to hear different views, different life understandings, for you to have different experiences. Your whole world starts to change slowly. And it's by doing these small actions constantly, that's how you change. By referring them back to God and to your human purpose, you begin to elevate your life, because you are meant to live an elevated life. You are an honored person. You have been honored with the knowledge and the truth of God. This in turn is expected to benefit not only yourself but society, where you begin to take responsibility for the well-being of others as well. It's not just you. You don't just take yourself to account, but you also take to account what's going on around you. And that's what human purpose is. And that's how you reinforce your human purpose. And you ensure that you belong to a narrative, that you create a story in which you are not just concerned with eating, sleeping, and self-preservation, like every other animal in the animal kingdom. Literally the same aims as a penguin in the Arctic Ocean. You are more than that. You are more than that. And don't tell me you work, because work is part of self-preservation. You go to work to get money so you can survive. Work only becomes meaningful if you place God into your intentions of going to work. It is only through God where man finds honor. Otherwise, he lives a lowly, animalistic, deadbeat existence, and he's humiliated by that existence, because it was never intended that he lives like an animal. It was intended that he is God's Khalifa, and he made a covenant to God that he would uphold that trust. And so there is honor and peace and integrity and respect when he upholds it. When you stand up against injustice and you correct your character, when you try to become a better person, you are honored. It is an honor. Now, if you remember in the last podcast, we spoke about human purpose under the umbrella of self-awareness.
So Islamically, being self-aware is being aware of the 5 aspects of man and also of human purpose. So you understand that you've got to work on yourself to ensure that you are able to carry out your human purpose. You have traits and characteristics within yourself, some of which you need to enhance and others you need to repress. And the only way you're going to know which one's which and what's going on with you is through self-examination and self-vigilance, where you're constantly trying to analyze what you're doing, why you feel a certain way, and you are real with yourself. You are truthful with yourself when you do it. Self-analysis, examination requires courage. Only strong, courageous people can truly sit down with themselves, hold that mirror up, and see themselves for who they are. A lot of people refuse to do it, and others, when they do it, they lie to themselves. They try to hide behind excuses. They don't want to confront themselves. So to assist you on this path, I'm just going to share with you what Imam al-Ghazali advises with respects to self-development and the enhancement of certain characteristics.
So according to Al-Ghazali, when 4 virtues of man, which is that of wisdom, courage, temperance and justice, are not in equilibrium, then this leads to vices like stupidity, heedlessness and sickness. So you can see, again, there is a call for wisdom. You've got to know what's right and wrong. Firstly, in order for you to know how to behave and what to expect of society. Because obviously you wouldn't know what behaviors you need to change and what you should keep and further enhance without having the wisdom of knowing what's right and wrong in the first place. You wouldn't know to go out there and whether to intervene, to speak out or not, without knowing if you needed to intervene because something is wrong. So wisdom, again, knowledge is really important in Islam. We are not a religion that encourages blind following. Our God is constantly encouraging us to use our heads, to gain knowledge, and let that knowledge inform what you do and how you believe. And then Al-Ghazali advises that once you know what's right and wrong, you can then go on to act in the right way. And he encourages that you do actions that install a sense of self-discipline. And he advises that you fast and pray. A lot of people don't look at fasting and praying and the acts of worship that God has made obligatory on us as things that are there to enhance our character. They think it's just something God wants us to do for the sake of it, and that's it, to show that He's our God and we just bow down to Him. Sure, that might be a component of it, but it's also there to get you to be resilient, for self-discipline. In making these things obligatory on you, things that you have to do, God is trying to install a sense of discipline within you so that it's easier for you to fulfill your human purpose, because there's going to be things that you don't want to do, but you have to do. Much of the traits that you need to leave behind are the traits that you love to do. You're more easily inclined towards. And God is trying to install in you a sense of self-discipline. No, you don't just do things because they feel good. You have to do things because they are good, even if you don't want to do them. And God is trying to help you by installing self-discipline through the prayer. Who wants to wake up for Fajr in the middle of the night from their comfortable bed? No one. No one does. But it's an exercise of discipline. So is fasting. Who wants to stop eating? No one voluntarily would do these things. That's why they've been made obligatory on us. Because God knows unless we're forced to do it, we're not actually going to do it.
And even when it's obligatory, a lot of people don't do it. But self-discipline is key to ensuring that you become an upstanding, healthy human being. Because much of the things that grieve you are to do with your desires, are to do with your inability to restrain yourself. You want to chase your desires, and God is telling you don't. I have given you freedom to do that, but I want to help you to not fall into that trap. So pray and fast, not because God needs it, but because you need it. And you need a lesson in discipline.
If it was up to you, you would just keep chasing your desires. And depending on what age you are, sooner or later, you'll turn around and you'll think, what have I done? I've been running after an illusion of life where if you just get this one more thing, you will be happy and you will be honored. When in fact, all you've been doing is giving bits of you away, really valuable, honorable parts of you away to this darkness, chasing this illusion of honor, when all the time honor was in turning away from it, from rejecting it, from refusing it to enslave you. Power was turning away and saying, no, I don't want you. I can do without. I want to turn to God. According to Al-Ghazali, desires have 2 points of origin, that of appetite and that of wrath, where appetite arises in the pursuit of pleasures, such as food and sexual gratification, and wrath arises to escape from pain. It's interesting here that Al-Ghazali equates wrath, anger. He says that arises due to trying to escape from pain. That you get angry because you're scared of being hurt. And I think it's really important to state here that life is quite painful. And I know when you're growing up, you think, oh yeah, next year is going to be my year and everything's going to be okay and it's not going to be like next year. And you find next year is exactly like last year, if not worse. Life doesn't get easier at all. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. The only thing that makes life easier is if you become more resilient. And the only way you're going to become more resilient is if you start working on yourself. You accept that life is not going to be easy. And there's nothing essentially you can do to stop your decree from happening to you. There is decree and there is destiny. And perhaps the only way you can change that is through dua. But I wouldn't bet on that. I wouldn't not work on myself and make dua and say, no, God's gonna, because that's not why you're here. You're here to better yourself, and in that betterment, go on to better society. It's supposed to be tough. It's not supposed to be easy. It is supposed to be like this. If you're going through life and it's tough and you're like, is it supposed to be like this? It is supposed to be like this. It is. And we've been told that it's a test. You will suffer. And it will be painful. But this anger that you associate and bitterness that you're associating with it is of no use to you. It will drag you down further and further, and it will drag you into hopelessness and kufr, disbelief in God. And you are being dragged down on false pretenses. Because God has already told you that it's going to be tough and it's not going to be easy and there's going to be pain. It's you that's refused to accept it. And then you blame God for giving you this life, but He already told you that's the way it is. You followed disbelievers, capitalist, secular perspectives. You've been following an illusion.
You've been sold a dream by the capitalist, neoliberalist, secular, I don't know what to call them, clowns. And you fell for it. They sell you this idea that you can make this life into a paradise. You just need to get more money and buy more things. Who does that benefit? Them. So it's time to become realistic and self-vigilant and go through the process of self-examination, because the only way towards peace is building character, and that requires judgment. And judgment, like I said, it's difficult. Al-Ghazali says the struggle against the soul creates much anguish for the person, but those that can bear the bitterness of the process will eventually feel felicity. It's tough, but once you get into the habit and overcome the things that are holding you back, you will have a sense of freedom. Because any desire, any objective, any aim that overwhelms you to the extent that it irritates you, causes you anger, it has power over you. You have been overcome by it. Let it go. Let it go. There are examples I can help you with how you can do this, like what this process looks like. Al-Ghazali reports that a story of a businessman who was rich and well known in the area. And he examined himself and found that he is very sensitive to people's opinions and easily offended. So he sat down with himself and he said, why do I feel this way? This irritation, this anger, this bitterness. He recognized that it's overpowering him. He's being enslaved to it. It's restricting him in his behavior, in his demeanor, in his life, in his friendships. And he realized that it's because he takes people's perception of him very seriously. He takes his reputation very seriously. And it's causing him to lose control through anger and bitterness. So he hired someone who was known to be a loudmouth in the community, and he gave him money. And he said, I will pay you for you to abuse me publicly in the market at the most busiest time. And this man used to follow him around, abusing him. His family, who he is, what he looks like, his attitude. And everyone in the market would hear. And the businessman carried on paying this man until he felt like it wasn't stirring any kind of emotion up inside of him. Till he wasn't feeling like he's embarrassed or wants to knock him out or wants to turn around and answer back. And you can see how honorable he is. Because it was the easiest thing in the world to just tell yourself that people are jealous of you. I've got money, people are jealous of me. They want to break me. They see I'm successful. I'm the business. They got problems. They see me rolling, they're hating. Yeah? It's very easy. And perhaps some of that is true. People are sick. They are jealous. They have sickness in their hearts. They do want you gone. They do want to break you. Those things aren't necessarily untrue. But that's the easy way out, because that's to do with them. How about you? He still took himself to account. It doesn't mean that he's misjudged people. Perhaps he hasn't. But he still took himself to account because he's an honourable man. He didn't need to. He did not need to at all. But he did it. And there is an example of other men and women who took steps to ensure that attachment to this world would not be installed or stuck into their hearts. For example, there was one man, I've forgotten his name, who used to lie in a grave that he's dug for himself every night in the garden. He would lay down in it because he said, I fear that the love of this world might go into my heart and change my character. Imagine, can you imagine doing that? Lying down in a grave every night, just to make sure that you weren't disillusioned by false claims of this world being your happy place. So there are things that you can do. I'm not saying dig yourself a grave in the garden. But there are things that you can do. But first and foremost, you've got to be real with yourself and take responsibility for the things that happen to you and your character. And then you can take steps to changing it by doing the opposite of what your soul inclines you to do.
So it's about being very truthful with yourself. And like I said, if you don't have human purpose and God there with you as you're doing this, there is no incentive to do it. Why would you do that to yourself? And the devil will come to you and he will say, look how disgusting you are. There is no way you're going to be able to change. And when you do the mistake and you carry on doing it, he's like, you can't get rid of it. This is who you are. God has made you like this. You are going to hell. Even that, you've got to tell the devil to shut up a minute because you're trying to be better than they are. And that you understand that you're never going to be perfect. But God is looking at how you are trying. And that's all that matters.
You know, the hardest thing after my research was the self-examination process. It was coming face to face with the fact that, yes, I was probably doing things, and on the surface I looked like a practicing person. Well, not really, because I wasn't wearing a scarf, but I did everything else, and I thought myself to be quite good, actually. And then later, when I was really examining myself, I was seeing that my faith in God was lacking. And it was because I was doing research on well-being, I connected it to that. So I thought to myself, how could I constantly be in a state of anxiety or discomfort or depression or sadness if I believe in God? Because the presence of anxiety and depression is a rejection of decree. You are rejecting God's decree. And that has led to all these bad feelings. You have rejected what happened in the past that God has decreed for you. And you have anxiety for the future where you are worried that God will not give you what you want. You are worried that He will not obey you. And this is where these feelings come from. And I found it really hard to come to terms with that, to be honest. Because all these things, they amount to shirk. Because when you refuse your decree, it leads you to do things like cheating, like relying on another human being in a way where you think that they can provide you with the security that God can only provide, but you have to lean into that notion and that belief because you want things to go your way. And whenever you trust someone in that way, there is humiliation attached to it. And there is a loss of morality and ethics associated with it. There has to be. We live in a world where corruption is right and the corrupt are in charge. The only way you're going to move to the top is if you be like them. because the system is set up that way. You have to bow down to evil. That's the only way, unfortunately. That's what success looks like now. So when I recognized that there were these faults inside me, it was disheartening, but I was also relieved. I thought to myself, oh my God, imagine I had died and I had met Allah thinking I was like, I don't know, 7 out of a 10. When in fact I was more like a 3. And that's how much I know. I would rather do this process of being hard on myself here, me doing it to me, rather than dying and then on the day of judgment having stood there, not out of fear, but out of like humiliation. Because I believe in God and I believe He should be worshipped. And then you show up and then He's like, actually, you're quite rubbish. So pop yourself in hell over there. And He would be well within His rights to do that, my Lord, because I refused to go through the process of self-vigilance and self-awareness. I refused to do that. But it's hard for us to do it because we live in a society where we are constantly told those who judge are evil, and even when you judge yourself, be kind to yourself. Just accept yourself for who you are, for how you are. And it is an acceptance that does not require any judgment or change. And it's dangerous. It's not just dangerous for the individual, but for society as well. If you keep brainwashing people into saying that you should not be judging yourself, that God would never judge you like that. No, actually, God will judge you like that. And you should be judging yourself like that. Because when you lift judgment, then no one is accountable for any action. And no one takes responsibility for anything either. That's why we have a genocide that's gone on for 8 months and no one's done anything. Because deep down, everyone feels like it's someone else's problem. Because there is no culture of judgment, of self-judgment first, so that you feel like you actually need to take responsibility for things. So self-accountability is not only important for your own health, but the health of society. And that's what the Islamic perspective is. That human purpose is associated with character building and then the building of society. That when you become good, then everything around you should be good as well. Because how can it not be with you being in it? Very nice. Okay, so I hope this was useful, as always. This is always my hope. Because at the end of every podcast, honestly, I'm like, well, that was rubbish. But I don't succumb to these negative thoughts. Okay, I think all has been said and done. And there's only one thing left to say, and that's do take care.